because that's just more knowing. So, like, you could know unknowing. How would you know not knowing? Just wondering.
Is that a question?
Yeah, I'll be interested in written answers.
Because people will tell the story of their awakening, which always, to me, I think, okay, there's someone there actually, you know, there's something about, well, there seems to be someone there. If someone is telling the story of, okay, this is how it happened, giving a big description of their awakening, I'm always like, oh, that doesn't smell quite right somehow.
No.
It's like, because I can't tell, it wouldn't make any coherent sense.
No.
It would be my sense.
Yeah.
It's just like, you couldn't tell that.
No.
You couldn't really say.
No, it simply doesn't happen.
I mean, you could compare like the history of saying, okay, yes, of course, there seems to have been an individual, there seems to have been a sense of someone, and now there isn't. You could make that comparison, but then you couldn't put that into a coherent story of how that happened, or I'm just guessing.
Well, you could. I could tell
Could
you.
you could
Yeah, of
build
course.
a
Yeah, of
narrative
course I
of
could.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
But what would it be? You'd be sort of making it up. Or
It
something.
didn't happen. Yeah.
I mean, so when you say it didn't happen, then it is just a load of.
Well, the reason I don't tell my awakening story is because it's boring as hell. I mean, if it's really, I don't know, ecstatic and blissful, then yeah, why not tell that story? People will pay a lot of money to listen to that.
Because that's the story that people.
But my story of awakening is fucking boring as hell. It's so dull, and well, it's
because people
nothing
tell the
at all.
story of this kind of like with the awakening, it's a sudden thing, and then it's just like amazing.
Yeah.
That's the story that people. Obviously, that's the story that people want to hear.
Yeah.
It's just like suddenly, it's just like wow, and there was nothing there, and that was amazing. Which is a really beautiful story.
Yeah, I'm not doubting any of that.
Mm.
I've got a couple of those I could recount, but it's not what we're talking about at all. I might as well talk about, my best golf shot yesterday.
Yeah, which could be.
It's just that you'd be more interested in the awakening story.
I don't know, the golf shot sounds good.
But, they're just another story of what I remember, what's remembered. That's all we're talking about, and nothing else is
So nothing significant about it.
One of the most wonderful things is, I mean, this is so ordinary, and yet there are some absolutely wonderful aspects to. All I can say is the absence of feeling like me. There are some wonderful aspects of it, and one of them is that everything is absolutely neutral. One thing isn't better than something else.
And is that wonderful because of the comparison with how it used to be when there was this sense that it's not.
When I say wonderful, I don't mean wonderful in the sense that I would have meant it as me, because wonderful meant a lot better than this, always. That's what most people, if I say wonderful to you, you're imagining something, you're imagining this experience that I had, this place that I went to, this person that I was with, and then you're making that the wonderful, and I'm waiting for that to happen again, or hopefully a bit better than it did last time, because she was good, and she was gorgeous, but there's another more beautiful experience just awaiting me, just about to happen, and nothing is about to happen.
So you're not. So there's. I mean, is it presumably? I don't know. You're talking about there are some wonderful aspects, and presumably
I went off track. I didn't even answer the question. The wonderful bit is that there's nothing more wonderful than anything else. So it's the opposite of what I would have had as an idea of wonderful.
Yeah.
Or beautiful. You could say that as well. So the idea of beauty is there's ugliness and there's beauty, and then there's a whole spectrum of where I could place everything. Everything I look at, I can put on a spectrum of beauty. That's gone.
I'm just wondering why that is then wonderful. That almost sounds like you're still describing an experience.
No, it's not an experience at all.
Or pleasure, for
No.
example.
No.
I mean, wonderful is
No,
describing
I'm not.
pleasurable.
Yeah, so when we're talking wonderful, you think I'm talking about pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about pleasure in that.
Yes.
I could talk about pleasure in that.
No, but obviously I want to know
Or
that
preference.
wonderful
One thing is better than something else. No,
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to get across is you don't want this.
Yeah, you don't want this wonderfulness.
It's empty of everything you were looking for, which was wonderful, ecstatic, exceptional, special beyond special.
Somewhere else.
It's just always waiting for the specialness to happen. Or whatever you're waiting for, you can make, but the sense of self is always in the waiting, anticipating. So without the sense of being me, there's no anticipation.
Which is wonderful.
It is. Or disappointment. Because you can't.
But disappointment could happen.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. But that would be to do with anticipation or hope, or
Well,
you were hoping for something, or there was hope for something, and then it didn't happen. Disappointment.
Yeah, there would be disappointment, but it's funny. It's so weird. If it's not my disappointment, it's just so. It's almost not noticeable, because it would be so fleeting.
Yeah.
I could still feel disappointment, but it would be almost instantly gone. So it'd be felt.
Yeah.
Because you think as me, I could live with disappointment for months on end, dwelling on it, loving it, bathing in it, soaking in my lovely self-pity.
Yeah.
I was good at that.
Well, because that would be what I consist of.
Oh,
and if I don't have that,
Well,
then
and
what
the
am
sense
I?
of unfair, because disappointment, and there's a sense of unfairness. It's not what I deserve better.
Yeah, because I had worked for what I thought I was going to get.
Worked hard for that.
But still, the sense of it's wonderful. It's like, this is what I always ask in meetings. It's always about that wonder, or the wow, or whatever it's being described. Would you say that is, even if there's an apparent need, that seems to be going on, that wonder is actually already there?
Yeah, of course.
It's not like anybody doesn't have that, or whatever. That sounds a bit too much like owning, but it's there anyway. It's present anyway. It just isn't, because the me wants to know, the self wants to know things.
Yeah.
It can't know that, so therefore it's not known. It seems like a problem. There's no wonder, but you're saying there is anyway.
This is anyway.
It is anyway because there isn't anyone anyway who does actually know anything.
No, there aren't. Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, there isn't anything. There's nothing more. So you're still asking that question from a place of, so how is it different?
Yeah.
Well, it's not different.
Yeah.
How could it be different than it is? This is too simple. I mean, really, it's outrageous. Because how could this be other than it is?
Well, because what you're saying is that there can be the apparent seeking.
Yeah.
Or there isn't. Two different things. Or two different. One is an experience, isn't it? This seems to be something that's happening
Yeah.
to me. So this difference, from what I can see.
If the difference is the same.
It's all the same stuff.
Yeah, and there's no stuff.
Seems to be.
Stuff? Oh, there's a lot of stuff, yeah. Seems to be endless amounts of stuff. You could say the stuff's all the same stuff if you want. Yeah. But you don't know what the stuff is. I like the word empty, but people find it really negative. I don't know. And yet, it's not. This. So if you ask me what the stuff is, I'd say it's emptiness, or it's empty, or it's nothing.
Yeah.
And all that is pointing to. It's not, by the way. It's totally alive. It's all paradoxical. So this emptiness is completely alive. Well, what's that? It sounds like I've got some knowledge of that, like it means something. It doesn't mean anything. All that is pointing at is the impossibility of me or you or any human being ever getting a remote handle on what the hell we're talking about. So we can point to it with words like emptiness, like nothingness, like. And all they're saying is, of course, so that they're really, it's not that there is nothing, because if there is nothing, then it's nothing something. It's not that. Because if there is nothing, then of course you've made nothing into something immediately. You're looking for that nothing. And the message, or the only thing I really want to tell people is, there isn't anything to find. This is fully found. Of course it is. Of course it is. You've all known that. Everyone knows it. But me isn't satisfied with it, so off it fucking goes, looking for more. Wants more. This isn't enough. This has not fulfilled me. I am not fulfilled. So if you tell me this is it, you can fuck off, because I've been looking and I've worked my bollocks off. I've suffered so much in the search for what is true and real. And I'm going to fucking find it. So don't tell me there's nothing to find.
Yeah, because you're just lying. No,
You bastard. That was me as a seeker speaking to you there. I felt like that a lot. I felt like that for years and years and years.
Like there was
So frustrated. So, I'd be ecstatic for a while in the seeking. I found something. Oh, he's wonderful. So I would watch him and read him and see him if I can, and just bathe in whatever is given off, and I'd make up stories about what I can get. And then I get frustrated because obviously that was not true. It was just a story of me getting somewhere, and then there'd be the frustration. The frustration would build and build until there'd be weariness and exhaustion. But then I'd find somebody new who could show me.
You're saying it a bit differently.
Yeah, it just said, oh yeah. And you do get that resonance. I get the resonance, because when you hear this and it hits whatever it hits, and I can't say, I don't know, I have no idea about trying to explain it. I don't even begin to try and explain it. But anyone who's, and by the way, it could be, I don't just mean at meetings or with speakers, and I don't mean in non-duality. It could be just a bee flying past, or you're just at Tesco's at the checkout, and you just make eye contact with the girl on the till. And you go, and that's it, and you just know that's it. Well, what's that? I don't know. And I'm not here to tell you I know. I'm here to tell you, anyone who tells you they know, I wouldn't listen to them. That's what I would say. Because, of course, they're just making up knowledge. And it's more seeking, because all they're saying is they know, and if you really listen to them, they'll teach you. Or you might, even get a little taste of it. And you'll hang around like fawning and just desperately trying to get a little bit of that. Well, you can't get a little bit. You've got it all. This is it, all of it. There isn't anything to get. It's fully got.
But that is what makes it, because that eye contact thing, I can really relate to that, because you almost like what is in that is that you just don't know what that was. You just don't know what it's just like, shit, what's that?
Yeah.
That's it, that's the key. I don't have it with bees, but I have it with
well, it isn't a key. It isn't a key, that's how this is. But you tend not to look at, I don't know, wherever. You tend to not look at a table or a cup and think, well, you tend not to, you're not getting great resonance from the cup, maybe. But of course, it's the same as the eye contact.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. Everything is the same. Because there aren't any things.
I think that's the biggest relief, that what you said there.
Yeah. So all the things that you've dreamt of, they die as well. So there's an aspect to this. This is the bit that the self, as me, never wants to hear. Is that you lose. You don't just lose everything that you've got. That was mine. If it's really obvious that you never had anything, there is a huge sense of loss in that. Everything that you've taken to be yours isn't. And there aren't many human beings, it seems, are drawn to look at that anyway, obviously. And even those who do, it's easy to pull back from that if you get a glimpse of it. But it's much worse than that, much worse than losing everything you've got. It's the impossibility of ever getting anything. So, you will have heard this a lot of times about, hopelessness and pointlessness and meaninglessness. That can be misleading though, because of course it isn't really meaningless or pointless or hopeless. It's just the absence of meaning and hope and purpose. Now that is quite different.
The absence of what?
The absence of the one who had hope, the absence of the one who had purpose, the absence of the one, me. If my life is purpose, if it doesn't have purpose or meaning, most people, it will be called depression, usually. You ask a GP, what's the most common, I don't know, if somebody comes and they're really down and they say, so what's the matter? Well, I just life doesn't have any meaning anymore and I don't know what's going on. No, I'm not saying that's a good thing, it's dreadful. I know depression well, and my story. But what that is a glimpse of how life is without me. And me gets a whiff of meaningless or pointless, and gets terrified and shuts right down and just protects herself and just goes into a protective form. So I'll hide away and try and keep my really terribly fragile. Me feels very vulnerable and fragile in that it's seen that maybe my life doesn't have meaning. Oh, maybe it doesn't have a purpose. Maybe there isn't hope of me getting all my dreams come true. And that, for me, for the self, that's dreadful. It's horrific. It's terrifying. Now, believe it or not, It's not at all. It's the absolute opposite. It's not. It's complete peace. Because your hopes and dreams and purpose and meaning were the things that caused me the most anxiety, caused me the most suffering. So throughout history, I think human beings who've had a glimpse of this, or maybe, they've lived this, just a story, but they've talked about this as the end of suffering. And of course, that's a huge problem with that, is it's a huge carrot. So me has the hope of the end of suffering. So I wouldn't say that, because it's not. Because end of suffering sounds no more pain, doesn't it? That's what it sounds like. Well, that I don't profess to know exactly what Buddha meant, but I think he meant my suffering. That's what he meant. My suffering. Not pain, though. And I don't just mean physical pain, not the end of emotional pain, not the end of grief or the end of loss or the end of love. If anything, then more, because life is not filtered through me, keeping me safe, and there's more for it, really. Emotions. They were just never yours. And if they're not yours, they're just free like everything else, just to appear and disappear. And that's nothing new, that's how it is. That's all I'm saying, is that's how it is. Everything just appears and disappears. You don't know how or why, you never did. But there's a lot of people who've told you how and why things happen. And of course, as a child, you believe them. There is a sense here that this is very much about being a grown-up. Because most adults, I don't think, they're not grown up. They're just big children.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Doing what they were told, just doing this, because this is the ultimate question. This is, you've questioned everything, and then you question everything again, and then finally the questions dry up, really, because you haven't got any answers. Because this is not an answer to a question, it's just the end of questioning. I just want to tell you that there's no answers to the questions you've got. And you could have a rest then.
Yeah.
Put your feet up. Really put your feet up and just...
Which is what you always wanted to do anyway.
Absolutely. You've heard speakers talk about this as home, haven't you? Coming home. And I was sort of anti that, because of course there's no one to come home, so it sounds it's a bit misleading, really. But then I do like it, on the other hand, because it is about what do you do when you get home from work? Put the kettle on, put your feet up, have a lie on the sofa, have a little snooze. I'd say put on Jeremy Kyle, but of course he's so you could say this is the ultimate putting your feet up. But you never get to put them down again. You haven't got any feet. If you put your feet up, you don't get to put them down again.
Because that's sort of where we're working towards, isn't it? It's just like all of this work, all of this kind of, I'm doing all of this that I'm trying to get to, and now I'll get everything all in the right place, everything will have come together, and then I can just stop, I can just put my feet up, and that's the end of all the work.
The thing is,
but
though,
what you're saying is,
this
is already,
your
feet are already up.
Your feet are up, yeah. But you're not allowed.
But you just think.
Well, me's not allowing you to put your feet up for long. Because the sense to me, you only put your feet up when you've deserved it. What about when you put your feet up because you're depressed? What does me say about that? You put your feet up for 2 or 3 months because there's depression appeared. the black dog is here. And you put your feet up. What does me say about that?
It's just things like you need to snap out.
And so goes, it's giving you the biggest shit ever, isn't it? You know? You're weak, you're useless. It's just, me is abusing me. Because that's what me is. Me is a self-abuse system. Just gives you, I don't know who said this, but I love it as a saying. If you had a friend like me, you'd have told him to fuck off years ago. Wouldn't you? If you had a friend who spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, you think of the way in which self talks to itself. And this is virtually universal. I don't know many people who talk kindly to themselves. You know, you're not a friend to yourself. Self is not a friend to itself because that's weak, and all you're doing is you're making yourself strong all the time. Or, you know, you mustn't rest. Me hates rest. It's not getting anywhere. Me is only in the where am I going to? Don't get me wrong, you can do meditation. That's the fucking opposite of rest, in my view.
You can go on
Me
holiday.
loves it. Looks like you're resting in peace. Are you fuckers like? You're working your bollocks off to be peaceful. I'm not a fan.
I'd never guessed it.
Sorry, Siddhartha. I'm not a fan of the Bodhi tree. Although just sit under a tree, lovely.
But it will go on
Nice
holiday.
bottle of Chianti. Pardon?
It will go on holiday, but not for very long.
Exactly,
It's
that's
just
it.
like, if you go on for an endless holiday for the rest of your life, then that's no good.
No.
But you can go on for like a week,
Yeah.
and that's great.
Mm.
But as long as you then get
Okay.
back on with your work.
Sorry, yeah, it's a nice analogy. So you could say what I'm talking about is, so it's not a vacation, it's not a holiday. It's redundancy. And you know what happens to a lot of, well, men particularly, but people when they are made redundant, what does me do with that? Spirals into depression. So what's the point? What's my life about now? What's going to get me out of bed in the morning? What am I going to do with myself? What's my purpose now? My purpose was, I just like robotically got up and went to work for 4 years. Now I've been made redundant. And it's not universal, but most people get very depressed with that, because me feels bereft of what do I do? Because me is a doing. There is a clue that, you know, there never was me, because that's the message is, you know, I'm not talking about what you need to wait for is when me dies. The message is there are no selves, there are no me's or you's.
So it's just a thought that dies.
It's really hard to say. It really, if you ask me what's died, just nothing is the answer.
Yeah.
Really nothing. Because nothing actually, it gets a bit, sounds ridiculous, but really nothing exists. So you didn't exist before. That just becomes, I don't know how, because it sounds like I know that and I don't. It's just very obvious. I can say the only way I noticed the absence of me was in the absence of the symptoms that I used to create. So for a start, there was just an outrageous sense of peace that I'd longed for. But here's the thing, I think when that was noticed, that'd been there for weeks and weeks and weeks before it was noticed. That's what we're talking about. So the subtlety of it is so, you know, it's not noticeable, the absence of me. It really is, that is it. You won't notice. Who would notice? You notice everything, but you don't notice that. It's absent. And along with it, so that would be lovely. You'll be wanting some of that, I know. But what you won't want is the complete and utter absence of motivation. You don't want that. Because if you say that to yourself, me will go, oh, you fuck off with that. I will never survive. Well, wonder of wonders, you were never doing anything, so it's perfectly alright. You never needed motivation. What about that? That was all a bullshit story that you told yourself and everyone else told you. Your whole life, from when you were tiny, from 2 years old, parents are always talking to their child about motivation, about effort, trying hard. I'd love the stats on how many times a child is told to try hard and to keep trying. What a bastard that is, isn't it? As though life takes effort, as though this takes effort. This takes absolutely no effort whatsoever. None. There is no effort required for life. None whatsoever. It's the biggest lie that we've all been told. And boy, did we buy that shit.
Because children are naturally pretty motivated without having to be told.
No,
they're
not motivated. No, they're absolutely not motivated at all. They're just doing what they're doing. That is not motivation. Motivation is, I need to do this, I should do that. That's what I mean. So, motivation, no.
But what I'm saying is that
doing takes no motivation at all.
Because they'll just get up and play anyway. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just like, that's what they want to do. I'm not saying that they want to do.
Oh, see, I'm not calling that motivation. It's just language, but I'm not calling that motivation. That's totally natural.
Well, you just say that pleasure is the motivation, or hunger is the motivation to eat, or it's just then simple, isn't it?
Well, that's just natural.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'm not talking about that as motivation. I'm talking about this psychological motivation. Yeah. So it's me motivation. So that's gone.
Yeah, but that whole motivation thing that parents tell to kids is only to sort of deal with the fact that they're feeling bloody crestfallen because they didn't do what they were expecting themselves to do. So it's trying to kind of...
There'll be a lot of that going on,
You know, it's already, well, I don't feel good.
Well, the one thing...
well, then you have to
I'll tell you what parents fear. Having a lazy child. You ask about any parents with teenage kids, they detest, they're in great fear of their child being lacking motivation, so they won't get on in the world. They're horrified by it. It terrifies them. Well, leave the poor bastard alone in his pit.
With his
tissues.
No,
he's probably happy. He's happy as Larry. In his bed or in her bed all afternoon. Go away. Yeah, leave them alone. Yeah, we're so horrible to teenagers.
And even if they're like miserable and depressed, they probably like that.
No, they're loving their misery. Yeah, exactly. But there is a great fear, that without that, sort yourself out. So they get onto the me and make it feel really guilty enough to get out of bed and clean his room or whatever mum's said to do.
And it's probably only because the parent doesn't want to feel guilty that it looks bad that their kid is away.
Terrified of being a bad parent. What's the worst parent you could be? Your child is totally unmotivated and it's not achieving anything.
And you don't care.
All parents do when they meet up is just talk about their children's achievements, generally. And they do a little sparring. See parents meet and they just do a little sparring comparison of what you do. Oh, yeah. Oh, your son's got into Sheffield. Oh, nice. James is in Oxford. It's like that. 1-0. Just to be proud. And you're never going to be proud of your child. You're a 14-year-old who just won't get out of bed. So I'm not saying staying in bed is better than getting up, but it's exactly the same is what I'm saying. One is not better than the other. And there's a great relief in seeing that one is not better than the other. Nothing is better than anything else, or worse. But that doesn't mean that you don't have preferences anymore. But you see all preferences are... So if you disagreed with me, I could talk about my political beliefs, which, by the way, there's nothing to do with beliefs changing or attitudes changing or preferences changing. They are naturally what that body does. It just does what it does, and it always has done. You just have the illusion that you could control it. That's all me is, the illusion of control. The illusion of knowing what's going on and the illusion that you're doing it. Don't know what I was saying there. Oh, politics. Was I? Oh yeah, so it's interesting because I realise because there's so much politics. And my political views are exactly the same, but I couldn't give a shit about them. Now, that is a massive difference, and yet it's exactly the same. So, my political beliefs will be exactly the same as they were, but I could not care less whether you have the same view as me at all. And I have no interest in convincing you that you're stupid for holding a different view, which if you think that's all politics is, I'm right and you're wrong, that's all it is. It isn't anything else. It's differences of opinion, often tiny, minuscule differences, because you think our political system, everyone's, they all believe the same stuff, really. It's all capitalist nonsense anyway. Which we've all bought universally as that's just how it is. Well, it isn't. It's just a way of thinking, but it's all universally accepted. And yet, our politics is these tiny little differences, making them very significant. So the freedom is in the not caring, because I cared because I wanted to be right. When you no longer need to be right, it's so wonderfully freeing. And then you're free to speak exactly as you speak. You're completely free to say your opinions, whereas before you were scared because they might not be right. And you were a bit afraid that somebody would challenge you and they'd be better at arguing their point, and then you might, it's a contest always, and you might lose. And me doesn't like losing. So a lot of people don't even like voicing their opinions, because they might be challenged. And so it's liberation for that. So it's liberation for opinion, for preferences, for whatever's there. Well, that's beautiful. Because you can't get it wrong anymore. It was only me that could get it wrong.
And it's just an opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. It's not going to save the world because you believe it.
Because as me, if you hear this and you hear, oh, I can't get it wrong anymore, that sounds great, it's hugely attractive. But of course you can't get it right. You don't get one and not the other. There's no right and wrong. It's the end of right and wrong. But boys, that makes life so easy.
That's good, because we don't hear that very much actually, because it seems to be presented like kind of an aloofness and a transit.
It's the opposite.
So there's this lack of engagement, and because that's also the radiant presence and the emptiness. Even the concepts, the constructs, that itself is the radiant presence, and like to deny those is just shortchanging.
No, this is
it gets infinitely more mysterious, because as I said, you don't know, but you don't have to be transcendent from or distant from.
Yeah.
That is it too.
Well, the word mystery or mysterious, I think that's so misheard by me, because me hears that as, it's not. This isn't is it?
No.
It's just what it is. It's just incredibly, beautifully, ordinarily, wonderfully what it is, life. What is that? It's mystery because you fucking don't know what it is. What is it? Well, it's whatever it is. What's that? I don't know. That's the mystery. It's not mysterious. It's absolutely the opposite of mysterious. So mystery is misleading because it has that, can't help be heard as transcendent. And I'm talking about complete imminence.
Complete.
Imminence,
What's that mean?
the opposite of transcendence, if you like.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
That's all
fell
right,
into
that's just
being
a
an
word
RE
I don't know.
teacher for a
I know
moment.
that word.
No, it's
I know that
lovely.
word.
Imminence is a lovely word. So this is complete imminence because everything is in this. That's what imminence means. Nothing outside. So so the ideas of God, quick RE lesson, are that God is both transcendent and immanent. So it's both fully everything and also outside. So I'm suggesting nothing to do with God, but this is just wholly immanence. There is only what is. There is nothing beyond, outside, more than.
And it has no properties other than just
It has
what it is. That's the point, isn't it? It doesn't if it's
It has-
mysterious, that would be a property
No,
of
it has
it.
every property.
But it's not like
It doesn't have properties because there isn't
as a whole you can't say.
no, because
that
there
has a
isn't a
single
this.
property.
So I'm only using the word this because I can't. You have to use a word to do whatever we're talking about. So I tend to use this because it's the least. It's pretty.
But are we talking about anything?
No.
Because when people say, "Oh, what are we talking about?" and then you're just like, "Well, what is it that we're
Everything.
talking about?" Which really.
But I like the word imminent. Just to go back to the word imminent, I do love it because it's imminent is saying is there is only what there is. What is that? I don't know.
An immediate.
Absolutely. Well, there is. You see, you could say immediate, but again, that doesn't even
Mind
come
you,
close.
that suggests time immediate.
Immediate, yeah, and present. I
Yeah.
always used to love the word present,
Mm.
but of course, presence goes as well. So when time goes, it's not. People tend to think it's past and future that we're talking about, and then there's only now. No, now completely goes. You don't get any of this. Where's now? No idea what that is. As though you could find that. It's just another thing for me to get a handle on. So, now I know. I can just try and be in the now. And me will do that for a lifetime. There is some benefit in. I know people who have done that, and the benefit just as meditation, because there's some freedom from the striving to become. You know, there's some freedom from future in that. But there isn't actually a now, like a knowable now. Is there? It's laughable, really.
Well, I suppose we could say there might be. I mean, we
You can
have no idea about
You
that.
can say might be to anything, Dave,
Yeah.
if you want.
Yeah, but you can hear it as like, oh, there is no time, as if that's also knowledge. Or there's no now, or something like that.
Oh, no.
It's just like, oh, there is no past. Well, who would know that?
Oh, nobody. Oh, no.
We just don't know, do we, what's going on? You know, what's the... Whether there's time, whether there's space.
Well, there's time and space, and there's no time and space.
But it's just arrogance to say, oh yeah, we can know what time
Oh,
and
yeah, of
space
course.
is. You know.
Yeah. You don't need to know.
They're just words, aren't they? They don't mean nothing. And there's no
No.
one that knows anything
No.
at the end of the day.
Well, they're useful concepts if you're doing science. You can do science and you can use time and space. But actually, a responsible scientist, a physicist, would turn around and say, well, actually, no, it's all it all refers to itself in the end. It's
Yeah.
a closed system. It doesn't actually tell you anything. It doesn't actually give you any sure, absolute, definitive knowledge. It just seems to work, and we can't claim anything other than
But
that.
if you want to know about time and you want to know about space, then study science.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in the
Don't
end,
listen to non-duality.
yeah, sure. And
It
you
won't
might,
tell you anything about it.
yeah, that's exactly my point. It's
That's
just like, you can come here and think that somebody's telling you, oh, there's no now, there's no time, or whatever, as if that's something that you can then do something useful with.
No,
And great,
not at all.
it's good, fantastic.
Yeah.
He's told me that all these scientists are wrong. Wow, we're getting somewhere.
Well, ironically, there's plenty of scientists would agree with that.
With what?
There's no time and space. Or they're just constructs.
Sure, because what they've been using falls apart when you go further into it.
And what the main thing that we're talking about is the idea of self. Science doesn't find any evidence for a self at all. None. That's pretty universal. Amazingly, time and space is a bit different. You get lots of different opinions on that. But scientifically, with self and also mind, there's virtually there's hardly any neuroscientists believe there's something called a mind, because they can't find any evidence for it. There's no evidence that there's a mind. And also there's even less evidence that there's this elusive thing called me, that there's a self who has a mind. So there's two aspects that we almost, as human beings, we pretty universally take for granted. One, that every human being has a mind, and that the other thing is that they're in control of their mind, and can do something to better their mind, to control their mind, to improve their mind, to slow their mind down, to purify their mind. Well, and spirituality says it all the time. But weirdly, spirituality makes mind the enemy. How weird is that? This is the end of enemies. There are no enemies here. Because everything's absolutely neutral. You can't have an enemy. You can absolutely dislike people intensely. No, that's a different thing though, isn't it? But yours, and then you make them, because you dislike them, naturally. Because you'll have a natural affinity with some people, and you're just drawn to them, and you just go, God, they're gorgeous. Don't even know why. It's sometimes almost impossible to put a handle on why do I find them so lovely to be with? And then someone else who apparently is really quite pleasant, you find obnoxious. And then you create story around story about what's going on there. So is it me? Is it them? What's the dynamic, the interrelationship? All bullshit. Naturally, whatever, that human being is repulsed by that human being. Doesn't need to know why, but of course me needs to know, because then I can control it. Because otherwise I might totally randomly go, piss off. Completely out of the blue, and everyone goes, oh, well, that was uncalled for.
They lost control.
You should learn to control that.
That's dangerous. I don't want to be with that person.
Exactly.
They're out of
So
control.
just me as the manager is managing all of that natural. So really all I'm talking about is just natural life. I don't have any sense of anything I say is spiritual at all. At all. And yet, of course, you can't help but, I might refer to spiritual traditions because they've talked about this. But I think the whole, dissecting, again, it's just it's an artificial dissecting life into material, mental, or psychological, spiritual, as though they're separate. There isn't even one thing. It's that. This is so unified, it's not even one. So it's funny, so what me does, so that it can manage, because all we're trying to do as individuals is break everything down into workable segments that I can get. And then I've got a handle on that now. Oh, I can even tell other people and they'll be impressed. But really it's all lies. It's not lies, but it is lies. Because it's just stories to make me feel a little bit more comfortable in this complete unknowableness.
So there is a description of me a lot. I mean, I've been to a lot of non-duality meetings now, and there is always talking about me. This thing that isn't.
It's probably best not to talk about it at all, but yeah.
But I'm just wondering if that's also something of that there is. I mean, because obviously the descriptions are often pretty similar, describing how it apparently works, what it's trying to do, and all of that kind of stuff. So there is a kind of something like a description of actually because what all me's feel is just like, well, I want to know about me. You also want to know about me. It's just like, how does it? So it's a kind of a science of like, just like this is because it's quite universal. It seems.
Yeah.
Like this is the way that me works.
Yeah.
For everybody.
It's pretty universal.
It's just like.
It seems
Which is just like really
nearly everyone. If I say about my me and how it works, it pretty much resonates with nearly everyone.
Yeah.
So of course there are differences, but they're small, aren't they?
Well, they might have different motivations if you point.
But
like you say, the way it works, which is mainly fear. Fear's the underlying sense of me. But it just seems to me that there is some sort of you might say there's nothing that there's no knowing of this, but there is some expression of the way it is, which we're all kind of maybe as a me longing to kind of get to know that. It's just like it is a revelation in itself, and it can only appear apparently these kind of descriptions of the me only really appear when the me seems to not be there anymore, and then it's just clear.
Well, it's funny, because I had a real...
You had a sense of how it was.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In fact, it's not changed at all.
So you understood how the me was working even when...
I've studied it a lot.
Yeah.
That was my quest.
Yeah. Because
that was my search, really.
Because you wanted to get on top of it and
I just
maybe even make it disappear.
Yeah. Who am I? It's the biggie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the question.
Yeah. But it's kind of...
And I don't mean just reciting that question. I mean going into deep I just studied psychology, really, because that's where I thought I'd find self.
Yeah, but you probably
didn't told me it knew. Psychology lied.
That's what I'm saying.
Told me it knew, and I took it at its word, and I worked my guts out trying to find, and because I thought the more I know, the closer I'll get. That's the lie. So the more you know, the closer you'll get. You won't. You will stay exactly the same distance as you've always been, which is no distance. You cannot get closer. You are not apart. There is no you to be apart. You can't get closer or further away.
But the thing is, because the psychology text is not telling you that, right, you then come to a meeting and you think it's spiritual because the psychology text is not saying that. The psychology text hasn't found that out through evidence-based, because it's all evidence-based, isn't it? Science and everything. So you have to be able to study it and look at it from a separate place and find it all out. And you'll never find out what you just said, through doing that. So then you come to a meeting like this and hear that kind of thing, describing what is kind of self-evident in a way, but you just don't think that is just a basic description. You think that is esoteric. You think that is somehow, that's the kind of the problem, isn't it? It's just like it isn't just a straightforward description anymore already, because you're not going to find it in a text or in a philosophy essay.
Well, me can't help but hear. The sense of self can't help but hear that this. I use the word transcend again. That it's beyond. That there's something more. I'm always wanting more. And the desire for more is just the sense of incompleteness. Is the sense of this isn't whole. This isn't complete. It's not fulfilled. Because I'm not fulfilled. I'm not done yet. There's still work to do. I need to work on myself still.
And where does that come from, that sense?
Me.
Not fulfilled.
Me.
But how does it work?
Oh, asking?
Just
What do you
thought
want me
might
to be
know.
a psychologist?
Huh?
You don't have to ask that question. You know the answer to that perfectly well. Absolutely, you know. Where does all that come from?
What does this
Me. I'm not
70s?
enough, am I? It comes from me, doesn't it? It comes from my sense of not good enough, not complete, not whole, not finished, not there yet, not done, still things to get, still places to go, still people to see, still knowledge to learn. I'm not done. And all I want to say is, there's nothing to be done.
So
I could get really religious and say, thy will be done, but I won't say that because it's ridiculous. But it's like, yeah, it's the end of your will. That was the pointer. That's what it's talking about. It's the end of your will. You don't need to do anything. You never needed to do anything.
So it's simply a misunderstanding, and you can't say anything more about it than that. You can't say, like, why is the misunderstanding?
Well, you can ask why questions. Get you anywhere.
Well, you can ask
You
why,
can
and
ask.
sometimes
You
get
can
an
ask.
answer.
You can ask why all day,
Yeah, and sometimes you'll get an answer.
Yeah,
I'll
the
ask you why sometimes, and you'll be like, oh.
and the answer will always be me. And without me, then there's no why at all.
I think
so-
that's what I'm saying.
so the an- so- Yeah, if you ask why, that's me asking. And so the answer to why is me, always. To every me why question. Why? It's because you want to, or you need to know. Or it's me, is the answer. Without me, there will be no why questions. There'll certainly be no interest in them. And the answer would always be, then why not? Which is equally as, because why and why not just sort of fall into it. Why is this as it is? Because really you're just saying, why is this as it is? There isn't, and this, without you, without the sense of self, there's no one bothered to ask it. Well, why is it? Because it is.
And actually, because it's just fine, I suppose. Anyway.
Well, yeah, and it's fine. This is the good bit. It's fine even when it's not fine. Fine doesn't mean that everything runs smoothly and your life's going to be just how you dreamt it would be, which is all me ever is. So fine means so nothing goes wrong. Well, no, of course, it's whatever's going on. But of course, it's the end of the possibility. This is the end of the possibility that it could be different. So this can't be different than it is. That's really obvious, isn't it? This can't be different than it is. And that's it. That's it. All of it. Because there isn't, but what about when it... Well, no, that's not... You're talking about something else you just made up. And all we're talking about is what is this? And the simplest, most beautiful answer is, I don't know.
And it doesn't matter.
How beautiful. That's all the liberation. That's it. That's the whole lot. I don't know. And you're okay with that? Yeah. Perfectly fine. Amazingly. Don't ask me how, but it's perfectly fine not knowing. There we go.
And is that
That's the whole lot.
Yeah. And is that why it's amazing? Is that just because it's...
But it's not amazing.
You
It's
were
not
saying at the beginning, you said
It's not amazing like you're waiting for it to be amazing. It's not amazing like amaze balls.
No, but I'm still asking what that is though. Because you did say at the beginning. It's
Yeah.
amazing, so
Well, it's amazing that it is, isn't it?
just that it is.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like me as a commentary about what's actually going on, and then there's just what's going on. It's
Yeah.
just seeing the difference.
It is.
What me literally is commenting. It's not actually seeing, it's just commenting. Whereas there's just what is.
Because in a way, that is the ultimate question that sometimes... I can't remember. Some philosopher was saying actually there's a question that is never really asked in philosophy, which
all the why questions just fall. If you ask me why, I would say other than me, I'd answer to most why questions, and then. But in terms of asking about this, I just say I don't know. And the great difference is, without me, it's lovely saying I don't know. Whereas for me, it was dreadful saying I don't know, because it meant that I had to learn that and find out. And then off I'd go trying to find the answer. So the liberation, the peace, the stillness, the rest, the joy is in the not knowing. And the not knowing, for want of a better phrase, is just the absence of me asking why questions, how questions, what will be questions, how did it come to be, how will it be? And it's just without the questions, then there is just, I don't know, everything.
But is it kind of a joy because there used to be a big search about, and then
It's
it's
just so easy.
It's not in relation to the fact that.
So right, I'm talking joy, and so as me, what would be close to it would be sitting on a beach with the sound of the waves, looking at the sea, and just the vastness, the emptiness. So, and everyone, that's pretty universally loved by people. Most people you talk to will love that experience because they're getting a taste of. There won't be any questions about the sea, probably. It's completely, mine's quiet, me's quiet. It's just what's happening. There's the sea, there's the seagulls, there's the waves. It's so sensually, there's just sensually, there's just what's happening. Sex would be, for a lot of people, would be similar. Because me might come into sex a bit more, actually, now I think about it. But when there's an absence of questions, that's really it.
And everybody, I think, even if you don't say, oh, it's glimpses and stuff like that, you could talk about glimpses, but everybody also knows that when the me is no longer asking and wanting to know about it and asking questions, there's just like, so actually everybody knows it. In that sense, it's just like everyone understands what you're talking about.
It's probably better to say, yeah, you could say that, but it's probably better to say that nobody knows it.
Yeah.
Than everybody knows it. But of course this is already known, there isn't anything else. This is all knowing. This is all knowing. All knowing is here. There's nowhere else it could be. Everything is here. So whatever's known is here. This is all knowing.
Yeah, and that's the massive anxiety for the me. It's just like actually the real knowing is somewhere else.
Yes.
Somewhere very different that
Well, you can't help but if you sat there, I've sat there for years looking at the person at the front like they know something I don't. And I'm here to find what and they might give me it.
Yeah. But it might be that actually, even while I'm sat here, somebody else who didn't decide to come here is having a better time than me.
Well, they probably
actually decided to do that.
Dave, it's pretty certain they are having a better time than you. I'm not doubting that for a minute.
Yeah.
Sure.
They will. Well, they'll be on a beach, won't they?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they're listening to the seagulls. Maybe with cotton chips.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah.
We'll have a cup of tea, shall we?
Yeah.
What do you do with Sam?
I was thinking that would help. That's all I was thinking, James. Would that help to